So essentially, what that means is that using only stable magnets, which are abundantly available, and copper, which is abundantly available, and a body which could be constructed out of anything from PVC plastic to glass to wood to uh, really any material that is non-magnetic, you are able to construct a device that creates energy without the expense of energy and does not require fuel, nor does it produce exhaust. Now, yeah, so I kind of mentioned this earlier, but essentially, I want no one to ever have to live the life that I had to live, and I want to improve the quality of life for humanity. So, what that looks like currently is taking down the structures or the evil that is currently in charge and currently ruling the world. And to do that, clearly I am under resourced. So as I am under resourced and I am only one man, what I can do is I can bring out ideas that are extremely disruptive, and those ideas can force the powers that be to change the way that they operate, or they can fully rob them of the power that they use to overcome us.
Where do you think your ideas come from? Is it something external? Is it something internal? Like, how does that happen for you?
Um, so after my head injury, and this is something I don't think I've ever said publicly before, but after my head injury, there was a point where I read an ancient text called the Emerald Tablets, or the translation of the Emerald Tablets. And having read it, I knew intrinsically that I wrote it.
Wow. Wow. So you're saying you were thought?
I think at some level I have that relationship, or my soul does. And some of the things that I do almost on autopilot seem to be coming from somewhere else. And sometimes even I'm amazed at the results of things that I've done, almost unwittingly, um, down to very, very specific details.
Call me crazy, but when you said that, I don't dismiss it, man. Like, I had not even a shadow of a doubt in my head that what you said was true. How do you think you implement that knowledge into today's life of yours, into today's reincarnation, man?
Well, I don't think that time is linear. I think that some of what I'm going to do in this lifetime, or meant to do in this lifetime, is going to retro causally affect things that have happened in the past.
Wow.
And I think this is perhaps the beginning, if you will.
Wow, man. When did that revelation come to you? Can you share that moment?
So that was about 2015, 2016 that I read the ancient text and I started to realize that. And then as I really started to build my companies and understand the effect that these companies would have, I realized I was doing things at a level even I didn't quite understand.
Wow. Okay. Did your life change after you realized that? Was there a voice in your head putting doubts in you, like, no, this is not it? Like, how was that process happening? Because it's a lot to intake, man.
Well, I definitely, like, saying that to people would sound crazy, right? And no sane person is like, oh yes, I have this in me, and it's part of a ancient this or that, right? That it's just kind of it's not that it's nonsense, and it's not that it's crazy. It's that it's lacking in substantive value until proven. Um, so it's not so much about the awakening for me of that knowledge is more of how do I actually use what I am to accomplish something worth doing.
But my question was it an internal battle, or or did you in fact realize it? Like, was it an epiphany where you're like, yeah, I know this was me, man.
Yeah, it was like a clear as day epiphany, without doubt.
Did you start having memories of any sort from that lifetime?
It's not so much memories; it's understanding.
It's like on an intuition
Yeah,
type of level, right? Yeah, man, you said that when you say that to someone, they might think you crazy or whatever. Or like to me, it's not, man. Like I started coming into the knowledge at 5, believe it or not. This lifetime for me, it must have been like that, man. So when you said that, I didn't have a shadow of a doubt because, think about it. Like you're so intelligent, wise, and well read. It's like, why would you say something like that, right? Unless you actually knew this beyond believing, like you actually knew this. And just to make this clear, and I've made videos on this, I think that intelligence and wisdom are two separate things. And I think that we have been focusing so much on intelligence and dismissing the wisdom where like that natural intuition, you understand, like the concept is deep, but I'm pretty sure you understand what I'm talking about.
absolutely.
So let's get into your inventions. Can you talk about some of your inventions and what are they, what do they do, and what will they accomplish?
Sure. And am I able to screen share on this one? Because it probably would help to.
Yeah, yeah. You do you have the little thing where it says present, or let me see. How does that
Uh,
because you should have, I have that thing. I don't know if
yeah,
let's see.
I got it.
So I wonder if it's something that I have to
Yeah. Should be
okay,
able to bring
there
it up
you go.
now. There we go.
Bomb. Yep.
So I presented these in Cape Canaveral a few weeks back, but it's 4 different technologies that I presented at this time. And basically, after my initial head injury, I asked myself a pretty simple question, which was, how do you get force without an explosion or exhaust in a motor? And the answer, as many know, is electromagnetism. So I settled on this design, which is 30 centimeters in diameter with 8 4-centimeter diameter clearances for pistons. And you can also see on the interior, there are piston rod clearances as well. Now, basically with a magnet, you have 2 poles, right? Your north and south, and facing the north to north will repel or create magnetic repulsion. And this should be, commonly accepted. I hope that it's commonly accepted. Now, the red on this image represents a solid magnet. So a solid is a magnet is a permanent magnet that is not electrically charged in any way. So at this point, there's nothing here showing any kind of electrical anything. This is just a shape of a body, and you have a base plate with a stable magnet. And on that base plate with the stable magnet, we have a partial crankshaft that has a stable magnet underneath and on top, allowing it to float freely over that base plate, removing friction. Now, on that crankshaft, I'm placing my rotating assembly, which has 8 pylons, which are surrounded themselves by stable magnets. And the interior of that rotating assembly also has a stable magnet so that it may move freely around the crankshaft. And if I show you this one again, so the bottom of that rotating assembly is floating over the crankshaft as well. So the idea here is basically to reduce friction and create a no friction scenario by counteracting forces of permanent magnets. Now, on that rotating assembly, I'm dropping on my my rods with my piston heads, and with that, I can cap that rotating assembly with a second portion here, which is right here. and then the second portion of my crankshaft to opposite it. Now, on my pistons, I have a ring magnet that is a permanent magnet around it, and I have a permanent magnet at the face. So that creates, I'll go back here just to show. I just want to point out in the piston clearances, I have these 4 indentations there where I've put in permanent magnets as well, neodymium. So I've created a magnetic pressure towards the center. And then with this, each of those ring magnets on the pistons would be floating against the wall of that piston cylinder. I then put a piston sleeve, which is wrapped in a copper coil. Now, at the end of that copper coiled piston sleeve, I've placed an electric magnet, which an electromagnet is just a ferrous material, which has been wound by a conductive material and is being powered. And then that creates a greater magnetic pull for the ferrous material than when it is not powered. Now, this is Faraday's law. This is accepted physics, that as you move a permanent magnet through a copper coil or other conductive coil, you are creating an electric force. This is how basically every single electric machine works today, whether it's an alternator or a hydroelectric dam or a nuclear power plant. They're all working the same way by running a copper coil and a magnet, or a magnet turning within a copper coil. This one, because we are moving a magnet directly through the coil, we are creating a current in the direction 90 degrees perpendicular to that coil. So basically that means it's coming off the end of our piston sleeve. Now, the firing order here, it's not the piston sleeve that is over each piston that is firing it. As piston 1 here travels through the copper coil, it is firing piston 3. So I have a wire that connects from the top of this coil and is going down to the electromagnet over piston 3 so that it can pull this piston in that direction towards piston 3. As it travels through this coil, the third coil is going to fire the electromagnet over piston 5, pulling it through, and so on and so forth. So this one fires 7, 7 fires back to 1. Now on the opposite side, I've done it so that we can simply reverse the positive and the negative on our electromagnets, and we would be pushing away our permanent magnet at the head of our piston. And as we push, we are creating a secondary momentum or force within this rotation. So basically we have 2 motors instead of 1 inside a single 8-cylinder rotation. So that means that as piston 1 is pushing up and firing piston 3, we have piston 5 is pushing up on piston 1. So it's moving that rotating assembly from the back and from the front, pulling it forward and pushing it. And then that cycle continues, reducing the mechanical workload. So this is a modular design, so it can be stacked, and with a 45-degree turn in each crankshaft assembly, we are able to make it so that at 8, I'm going to skip forward a little bit. At 8 of these, we would have it so that one portion of this is firing in an 8 stack at all times, and one portion is pushing at all times, reducing our mechanical workload to the lowest point possible. Now this looks scary, but this is just your standard car alternator, and the only point I'm making here is that you have stable magnets inside of a rotor, and that's within a stator, which is your copper coil. This is usually 3 different wires wrapped at 120 degrees, which is feeding into your rectifier, and it with the 6 ends of those 3 different copper pieces at 120 degrees of the circle. So that's your direct current alternating current alternator, and that's relatively easy. So rotation is not overpowered by friction. The passing of the permanent magnet through the coil is sufficient to power the electromagnet. The electromagnet is sufficient to pull the stable magnet without overcoming the rotating assembly's magnetic repulsion, and the force of the rotating body is sufficient to overcome the alternator winding resistance. Now, what this means is that because the Faraday's law, I don't have to add any kind of electricity or power to this motor to make it work. I can simply use a stronger magnet. If I need a stronger magnet to get more force, I can increase the motion of the magnet or the speed at which I begin turning it, and I can increase the area or the number of turns of the coil. Area just meaning the gauge of the copper coil around this piston sleeve. So now I have my modular design in an 8-stack, and because I can have an alternator at each end, I can now use the alternator that is above it to supplement and send a current down in a rotational manner through the rest of it to create an exponential runaway force for the rest of the motor that is limited only by the mechanical and material properties of the motor. So that's kind of the final way that would look.
Before we go on to this one, let me hold on a second. Yeah, let me real quick before we go on to the second one. Can you give us simpletons the dumbed down version of?
Yeah. So essentially, what that means is that using only stable magnets, which are abundantly available, and copper, which is abundantly available, and a body which could be constructed out of anything from PVC plastic to glass to wood to really any material that is non-magnetic, you are able to construct a device that creates energy without the expense of energy and does not require fuel, nor does it produce exhaust. Now I've made these designs fully public, and I've minted them to multiple blockchains, and they are open source. I have not patented these designs, and I do not intend to patent them, because if I did so, I would be asking the government's permission. And they have what's called the 1951 Invention Secrecy Act, in which they're able to take any patent application and bury it and put you in prison if you were to talk about it. So I haven't asked their permission. I'm just putting these out there, open source, where anyone can find them, and they cannot be removed from the internet, because they would have to take down every last one of the blockchains I've minted them to. And with that, I've removed their ability to stop this effectively. At least it won't be as easy as they found in the past.
So basically, you're trying to give the world what we so desperately need, a source of quote unquote free energy, man.
That's right.
Wow. I don't know what you feel like about Joe Rogan, because I think at some point he sold out. But I'll tell you this: we're all gonna push for maybe you being on Joe Rogan, because he does have such a big exposure, man. You know, there's a lot of people tuning into him. My mind is blown yet again, man. I didn't think it was possible. My mind is blown, man. First of all, as from a human being perspective, thank you so much for doing this, man. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. We need this, man. So you wanna go on to the second one?